Welcome back. Two contradictory court rulings this week throwing Obamacare into question. One D.C. appellate court panel calling subsidies to people on the federal exchange unconstitutional. But just hours later, a mile away, a panel of judges in Virginia ruled the opposite. Stephen Parente is a professor of health finance and the director of the Medical Industry Leadership Institute at the University of Minnesota. Lan-Hee Chen is former policy director for Mitt Romney. He's a board member on the Partnership for the Future of Medicare. Gentlemen, good to have you on the program. Thank you so much for joining us. What is this? What do you think this means? Does this mean that this is headed back to the Supreme Court? And can Obamacare survive a second push at the Supreme Court?
It probably means it's headed back to the Supreme Court. It's going to go through 2 or 3 different ways to get there. It probably will survive again, but it's going to get messed up along the way. And one of the biggest concerns is that this is going to be coming down, probably down the pike, a lot of pieces right in the midterm election cycle.
Yeah, Lan-Hee, let's not forget how we arrived here.
Yeah.
You know, the allure for the states to set up these exchanges were these subsidies, these tax benefits, and then 36 states, and we're not going to do it. So the federal government has to have these exchanges set up, so then they decide, oh, well, everybody can get the tax subsidies.
The interesting thing is this is really about a lot more than just whether it's a federal issue or a state issue. It goes back to a fundamental flaw in Obamacare. The thing was poorly designed, and we're seeing the impact of that now. You have all of these conflicting court decisions. You had the 2012, remember, when we were in the Supreme Court before. This thing is going to get ugly, and it's going to get ugly fast.
Steve, the issue is for the person at home who's trying to figure out if they have health insurance or not, they're confused. Am I in this state? Am I federal? I mean, what does that do to the overall economy, to the state of health care? You just give up.
It doesn't bring a lot of confidence.
Exactly.
I mean, and to Lanny's point, this really was not supposed to be this way. At least it's supposed to be somewhat of a better design. It was always messed up to begin with because of just the way it got birthed politically. And so this is where a lot of this starts to come down to roost. I mean, the only reason why we have these differences anyway is a Senate and a House version that never got reconciled. And the House, actually, the House version never made it anywhere. It's the Senate version and inadequacies in the Senate version in 2009 that have come to roost.
You know, the funny thing is that this is really, it shouldn't surprise anybody, right, that we are in this place now where there's all this confusion. Even the people who wrote Obamacare disagree over whether this was intended to be state administered or federal administered. And then you have the IRS in the story again. They're the ones that have said you can do this through federal exchanges.
I'm glad you brought up the IRS. I'm going to bring this up with our panel, but I love this op-ed out of the Journal about the fact that the IRS is handling Obamacare. I mean, we know what a mess the IRS is and how they are politically motivated. Is the IRS going to be deciding if I can get that knee replacement, if my grandmother can stay alive? Is it the IRS who's deciding, and are they going to decide based on my political motivations?
The IRS decides whether it's tax deductible or not. And that's actually, the IRS has more to say right now in Treasury about what's an approved medical device, what's an approved deduction for secondary prevention for drugs in the future than at any other time in history. And they're understaffed to do this. This has been the critical problem with this, is that these things have been laid at the Treasury's doorstep without adequately thinking them through or staffing them. And that's going to slow everything down and make a mess.
No one would have thought that the IRS was going to be the agency at the center of this scandal as well. Yeah. But indeed, you know, it is the IRS, and it's all of these federal agencies now that have an enormous amount of power. If you look at the D.C. Circuit decision, it really did focus on what did the law say. And the law said that the subsidies have to come through the states. And so now we're seeing a huge overstep of the responsibilities of the federal government, all because of the way the administration interpreted the law.
More oversteps. Real quick, how does this play out going forward? What's the next catalyst in this?
Well, I think it's going to be a huge legal situation. In the D.C. Circuit, you know, they're going to hear the case en banc. Chances are the Supreme Court will take it, but you never know. This is going to be a huge mess.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your time. We'll be watching this. Up next, the cat and mouse game is over. Backup tapes of Lois Lerner's lost emails have turned up. What that means for the IRS scandal as we look ahead on Sunday Morning Futures. Back in a moment.